From around the middle of December, when the city is decorated with bright lights, everyone lives in expectation of a miracle. The spirit of the upcoming holidays fills the streets, livening up people as they go about their pleasant tasks. And there is probably no one who is not noticed by the kind magician with a beard and an enormous sack of presents, especially if this person is still very young. Perhaps the main companions of childhood are toys and fairy tales. One of the most famous of Andersen's fairy tales, The Steadfast Tin Soldier, begins as follows. Once upon a time there were 25 tin soldiers, all sons of the same mother, an old tin spoon. And so they were all brothers. They were fine, gallant lads. They carried their weapons on their shoulders, their chests were thrust out, they had red uniforms and blue shiny buttons. In a word, they're a marvel, not soldiers. I think I'm not the only one who wonders how you can make 25 soldiers out of the same spoon and what these soldiers were like, for Andersen wrote the fairy tale in the mid-19th century. In 1.5 centuries, the world has changed a great deal. Today you can find things in toy shops that Andersen didn't even dream of. Fantastic robots with spaceships, sports cars, tanks, planes, and many other things. And if this diversity sometimes bewilders adults, children feel quite comfortable here. Traditionally, girls play with dolls, but boys prefer toys with a military theme. So, a set of toy soldiers always makes them very happy indeed. For people who grew up in the Soviet Union, weighty metal and plastic figures of sailors, horsemen, and infantrymen are still a symbol of childhood. Many people may remember now the battles that were fought on the floor in the children's room or in the yard between armies of friends and classmates. Some kept their toy soldiers as they grew older and now play at soldiers with their sons. Others gave them to a boy next door or to a kindergarten. But for some, toy soldiers became the focus of their entire life and daily, painstaking work. Masters and collectors are people who have managed to preserve a piece of childhood in their souls. There is something captivating, wonderful and magical in miniature figures, something that is timeless. A toy, a souvenir, a work of art, everyone has a toy soldier in their life, even if their childhood ended a long time ago. Today, tin soldiers look like this. These incredibly beautiful figures are manufactured by the Petersburg studio Russky Vitязь. We specialize in exclusive production. Several years ago, a run of 100 items was a very large number, and now the circulation is usually 10 to 20 items. Many figures are ordered in just one copy. The whole world talks about the Russian school. And furthermore, we gave it a boost in general. In principle, we raised the quality of miniatures. We created our own school that differed from everything that was done in the world before this. It's hard to call the works of Russky Vitязь tin soldiers, and few would think of playing with them. The talent of the sculptors and artists has turned a toy into a work of exquisite sculpture. Besides tin, other materials are also used in the figures. They include steel. The shafts of all the banners are all made of steel, and the spears are made of steel. Fabrics are made from copper foil which don't lie on the body. For example, banners, coats, ribbons. Jewelry is also widely used. Gold and precious stones. Catherine the Great, our empress, has a crown made of 60 diamonds and rubies. And Ivan the Terrible's staff has a knob made of gold and rubies. And on his chest he has a cross on a gold chain with diamonds. It's not so much the precious stones that enrapture you when you see these figures. The great skill of Russian artists, figure casters and engravers draws great admiration. Art knows no boundaries, language or otherwise. It can be understood by anyone in the world because it's the embodiment of beauty. But perhaps in every figure by Ruski Vitez, whether it's a historical figure or a fictional character, the spirit of the steadfast tin soldier from Andersen's fairy tale is present. There are a huge number of people in the world who collect toy soldiers. In St. Petersburg, collecting toy soldiers for a hobby has a long history, its own traditions and personalities. Anatoly Zhitnikov is a Petersburg collector who's been captivated by toy soldiers from the age of 6. His collection includes figures manufactured in the Soviet Union, starting from the 1930s. He hunts them out, restores them, and even creates new ones. Toy soldiers have mystical qualities. You start to make one soldier and you get a different one. It already lives its own life. It already commands. It's independent. It has its own life. You can dream of toy soldiers. The soldiers stand somewhere and you look at them. They give inspiration in difficult moments. They sometimes replace real life when you can't cope with it. And the moment comes when I don't command them. They command me. The magic of toys lies in the fact that through them, the child begins to understand the surrounding world and its laws. For playing is one of the founding elements of teaching and instructing a person. By playing at toy soldiers, the boy grows up to be a fighter and defender. He feels like a little commander. He commands troops. He moves them from place to place. He fires cannon and shoots. Ah, this one's injured and this one won't be injured today. I'll take him out of the line of fire and I'll save him. Children play in the most unusual way. Adults can't understand this and can't invent the sort of games that children can. However, if children simply played at soldiers, for adults the miniature figures performed a different function. We know that in the military academies of the past, soldiers were used in tactical games. They were used to teach soldiers the art of managing troops and were very widely employed from the 16th to the 19th centuries. Toy soldiers can be seen today in museums of military history. The State Memorial Museum of Alexander Suvorov in St. Petersburg is an important place for all connoisseurs of military history. The name of the famed commander, who didn't know defeat in 50 years of constant military service, is known all over the world. Suvorov passed on his entire theoretical and practical experience to soldiers through daily training sessions. Along with the personal items of the great Russian commander, military trophies and weapons, the exhibition features dioramas with tin soldiers. An attack in square formation, movement in march columns and the famous through attack. This reconstruction clearly demonstrates one of the key principles of Suvorov's victorious strategy: intensified battle preparation. The tin soldiers in this diorama are different from the ones we're used to. They're flat. Their history starts in the first half of the 18th century in the German city of Nuremberg, where the first factories making toy soldiers appeared. This is where the common name for these figures came from, the Nuremberg flat tin miniature. The models with soldiers at the Suvorov Museum allow us to imagine what happened on the battlefield in those distant times. Besides everything else, the artistic merits and all that, there's one more important element: The flat miniature is one-dimensional, shall we say, and this makes it possible to reduce the museum area used quite considerably. At our museum, dioramas serve as an illustration to our description of the art of war in the second half of the 18th century. For example, this model illustrates an episode of the battle on the river Trebia in northern Italy, which took place in June of 1799. After a long and exhausting crossing, Suvorov's army encountered the French troops and without preparation or rest went into battle. The result of the three-day battle was the complete defeat of the French superior forces by the Russian army. The second diorama is the Battle of Kunersdorf on the 1st of August 1759. The young officer Alexander Suvorov received his first experience of battle. In the diorama of the main exhibition of the Suvorov Museum, only part of the collection is displayed, with the majority of the tin soldiers, including those manufactured in Nuremberg, kept in storage. These are collections of the two most famous Soviet and Russian collectors, Lyushkovsky and Lyubimov, and also later acquisitions. There are around 40 to 60,000 at present. These figures were made in Germany in the first half of the 20th century. They're figures by Heinrichsen, Ochel and Neckel companies, and some of the figures were made by Russian and Soviet artisans. The staff officers and frontline soldiers, Mikhail Lyushkovsky and Alexander Lyubimov, were experts in military history and used toy soldiers in their lectures and papers dedicated to various battles. Lyushkovsky and Lyubimov inspired interest in Nuremberg flat tin miniatures in the USSR. Of the sets held in the stores of the Suvorov Museum, we may single out such sets as the Giant Guard of King Friedrich Wilhelm, which was called this because soldiers in this corps were no shorter than 180 centimeters high. The Grenadiers of the Guards of the Pavlos Regiment, which can be recognized by their pointy, shiny helmets, which they earn the right to wear by showing bravery in battle. The composition Wallenstein's Camp, named for the outstanding commander of the 17th century, who became the hero of Friedrich Schiller's play. Or this, a rare set, the retreat of the Grande Army from Russia. When they were defeated in 1812, Napoleon Bonaparte, soldiers returned to Europe exhausted and dejected. The composition, The Capture of the Eagle of the 4th Line Regiment in the Battle of Austerlitz, is a real historical episode. This is a work by contemporary Russian artists Alexander Metelev and Vasily Safonov. And this composition, showing Alexander Suvorov and the Austrian Prince of Coburg after the victory at Rymnik, has been on board the International Space Station. One of the authors, the Petersburg artist Vladimir Nuzdin, is an internationally recognized master working in the style of flat Nuremberg miniatures. His many years of experience and knowledge will undoubtedly help him to find the right look for the steadfast tin soldier. Collectors and historians often go to him for advice and consultations. In the mid-19th century, Hans Christian Andersen wrote the fairy tale The Steadfast Tin Soldier. In an attempt to find out what this soldier looked like, I met with collectors and manufacturers of military historical miniatures and visited the Suvorov Museum,